let's talk about the base class, and we'll talk about this from the object browser as well as this derived class project within our object-oriented folder. I'll also talk about the base keyword and how that is going to help us out. First of all, don't confuse this. This is just a name of my class here called base. That's all I'm doing. Base, the constructor base, and we're going to call it derived class because we're dealing with a derived class. As you can see, derived, colon to indicate inheritance, and we're going to inherit base. So in the object browser, if we look at our project here, you can see our class derived classes, and we look at base. Well, we have some functionality in base, methods and properties. Well, we're going to have bases and interfaces, actually, that are going to derive or allow base to derive from. And that's going to be object, because object is the ultimate base class of all classes in the .NET framework. It's the root of the type hierarchy, as we're going to see. So our object is going to actually have this ability to work with the different members that we have of the system.object object, members of object. So these are the bases of base, and our derived class is going to inherit base. And it's the base class for our derived class. Alright, so that's the relationship, and as you can see, if we just collapse everything here, we have two classes here, and we have a class here that's going to allow us to actually instantiate a base. First base, we'll do it a second time, we'll get a spacer in here, and then we're going to create our derived class, and then we're going to get a member, work with a method from that derived class, and we'll call to actually. Let's just run it really quickly. So you can see we're calling the base class constructor. Then we're calling the base class custom constructor, and there's some sort of value there. Doing it again, we'll see why. And then we're going to talk about the derived class. That's what's getting echoed out to the console here, and then some other information. And then if you look, we'll just take a peek at what we have in our main area here, because that's easy to see. Working our way up, derived class test here, and then d1.value of private. That's where this private variable is coming in. But we have a base class test and a derived class test, and we're going to see how that works. We're using the base keyword, different thing there. Anyway, we'll get back to that. But this is our class that's going to actually get that main functionality going. This is our derived class, and we'll take a look at our base class. So we have a protected variable here, and this is going to say protected, as we talked about earlier. Protected is saying that I is going to be accessible from our class and our derived classes. Any classes that derive from this class can use this variable. So we know that already. So in the constructor, we have a default constructor here. We're just going to make that I minus 1, and then we're going to write out, hey, this is the base class constructor, as we saw. And then we're going to have a custom constructor, just takes in an int, and then we're going to write out, well, this is the custom constructor. Let's show what I is, which is I here, but it's really just the method of X, but it's I, the variable that we have here, the protected variable. So that's what that does. And we can see that there, base class constructor, and then we call the custom constructor. And if we look down in our code at the end in the client, you can see that we call the base default and the base custom, passing that variable in there, as we would because that's an int. So then we have a test function, which is just going to say, this is the base class test method, no big deal. We saw that output though. And then we have a test2. Don't worry about that for now. And when we look at our derived class, we derive from the base. We're going to have this funny looking base keyword here. This is going to allow us to call that custom constructor that has an integer for that particular parameter within that custom constructor. So we're actually calling the custom constructor for base 1000. So we're passing in 1000, and that's why you see base class custom constructor called here with 1000, because that's what we called. We let this call it from the derived. Base is going to get back and go to the derived. And then after that, that's in the constructor. We're going to, at the bottom there, output the I am a derived class here with that 1000, because that value is based off of what we did with our custom. It's calling the custom constructor, but then afterwards it's going to output this. So it's going to do that first, and then it's going to output what our constructor in the derived class wants to do. There we go. And then we call the method later. After that, value of private, and we're going to actually access that private information because it's not private, it's actually protected. But it's private, meaning that it's not available to the outside world, it's protected, and it's private to the base class and the derived classes. Protected. Lastly, we have another base representation. We have base.test, and this is allowing us to call the method of our base class test, and that's why you see it called twice here. Base class test, that's what this is doing, and then derived class test is what's being printed, so it does that first. So it's important to note that the base class access is only permitted in a constructor, an instance method, or an instance property. So we haven't done the property, but we have done the method and the constructor.